Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Colleen and I'm pleased that you came back today. I hope that you're having a really good weekend. I'm filming this on Saturday just before noon, so not too soon because I'm preparing lunch today, but then I am going to can the leftovers. So if you stick in there, I will show you the process of making our hamburger soup, which is laden with a lot of peppers. It could almost be like a stuffed pepper soup, except without the rice. So hang in there, I'll gather everything up and I will be right back. So for the first part of this process, I'm just going to add a little bit of oil to a big pot. I guess, I'm not even sure how large this is. This is the pot that comes with your pots when you buy a set. It's the big one. I didn't think I needed to break out the soup pot today because this is just for a little batch. So into here I'm going to more or less crumble it up. And this is fresh from the grocery store. I didn't have enough frozen to do this, so it hasn't been heavily packed. And I'm just going to crumble in probably about 2 pounds of hamburger, I guess. I got one of the family packs of burger. Not the big one, the medium-sized one. And that seems to make a goodly amount of soup for us, for sure. If I was just going to make this soup for us to eat today, then I certainly wouldn't use this much beef. I would probably work with maybe just under 1 pound. So I'm going to get this browning in the pot. Just grab one of my big wooden spoons to press it with. And first one I took out of the drawer wasn't clean, so I had to go back in the drawer again. So while I'm working on this, I'm also going to take you back to the counter and show you some of the preparations as we go along. So you're going to kind of watch me go back and forth today. So I'm not quite sure what's going to fit in this lovely pot, but I am going to get started with the peppers. And I'm just going to break down a few peppers. I have been reading a lot of I'm trying to catch up on everybody's posts that have replied on my channel, and I really appreciate your comments and in some cases your concerns, and I'll try to address them as well. I'll leave these in kind of big bits that'll fit on a teaspoon. So one of the comments that I've seen, that I've received quite a few times, is about the Nesco canner and how it hasn't been approved by the, is it your USDA that makes the approvals for food safe fruit items? I wanted to just give you my thoughts about that. I have nothing really to back this up, but one thing, Nesco, and one thing that I do have, and that I will either link below or I will put the text in the description box below, along with, you know, any other information that I can gather up for you. I do know that Nesco is a big company. They're producing a lot of these canners. They're very, very popular right now, and I would say with good reason. The official body that governs your canning regulations in the US says on their website that these canners have not been proven, they have not been able to prove these canners safe. And as I continued to read on, I realized that what they were saying is that they haven't had the funds or the ability to test these canners themselves. I would think that a big company like, or a company the size of Nesco, would be very, how would I say this? It would be in their best interest to make sure that this canner says what it says when they're recommending it for people for their food use. I can't imagine, ugh, like I got some work to do here. I can't imagine that they would be putting out a product over and over again that they haven't either tested or that they had any concerns at all about people getting sick from. That's just my thought on it. That being said, I'm not recommending that you use the Nesco canner, but it's what I use. And I am really satisfied with the product. So do your homework, but definitely keep in mind that just because the product, the company, US food grade company, the one that takes care of all your canning, just because they haven't had the funds to do it doesn't mean that Nesco hasn't done those safety checks themselves. So I'm just gonna go stir up this meat. I hear it getting pretty crackly over there, and then I'll be right back. So in the bowl, I've some celery, some green red pepper. I'm going to do up some onion because I enjoy hamburger soup with onion. Not everybody does, but I feel like it really adds something to the soup. We go through a lot of onions. I think part of that's from being raised on farms, you know, and onions not only add flavor quickly, but they're usually plentiful in the gardens. At least here where we live, they are. We have finally had some warm weather. I didn't know that it was ever going to happen. It felt like we were going to be cold for a while, but for the last 10 days, we've had some beautiful sunshiny days. Bluebird days, we call them. Maybe you do too, where it doesn't matter where you are, the sun is shining and the sky is bright blue. It's hard to imagine that we're already in the first week of August. It feels like summer just started. But it's been a busy one. We've had grandchildren coming and going, and I'm working on this soup today because I'm preparing to go away for 10 days to visit with my daughter and brother who live on Vancouver Island, which is a long trip away for me. And so I don't often go, but I try to go every year at least and spend some time with them. And that's coming up. I'm going to take you back over to the stove and show you what I've got going on so far, and so that you can watch this process all the way along. So I've gotten it all broken up. I hope you can all see that. And you can hear it sizzling because I've got the pan quite hot. I want to add a little bit of flavor through just simply browning. The meat adds more flavor to it. And this is kind of a weird recipe because although I'm making hamburger soup, I'm going to put in chicken broth to help bring up the flavor. So in the kettle here, or in this big bowl, I have onions and celery and peppers. And I'm just going to dump them in the bowl and give them a good stir while I tell you what's up here today. So because I'm going away, I'm making soup for today, and I am going to also make some soup canned for my husband while I'm away. One of the things that, well, I should back up. I guess lots of people use their canners principally to prepare things for long storage, but really, that's not how we use our canner very much. We use our canner more to prepare food for the short term. so that while I'm working, I can come home from work and I don't have to have the big rush to get dinner on the table. So I've got a couple more things to add, so hang in there. So here in the pot I'm going to add about, I'm going to guess here, about 1.5 tablespoons. I don't know how close that was, of Italian seasoning. I'm winging it a little bit here. Not used to, well, no, I am more used to just winging it. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of garlic powder. I'm not going to add any salt at this time because I am adding chicken broth and I couldn't get low sodium, so I will not be using that. And I'm wondering how many of you use the tomato paste that comes in a tube like this, because it's definitely been really useful in our kitchen. So I'm going to use about 1/4 cup probably, because we like that rich flavor. That way when I'm using it, I can just put the cap back on it, I pop it in the fridge, and I don't have to worry about what I'm going to do with the rest. Although if I had a can, which I often do if I'm working on a bunch of recipes, then I would just take the remainder out and put them in small plastic bags in the deep freeze. And that way you can use the smaller batches when you need to. This is looking good so far. My goal is to not cook this too much to start with, because I'm going to can it. So I'm adding 2 cans of, I guess they're 28-ounce cans of Kirkland diced tomatoes. You can use whatever you happen to have on hand. My daughter-in-law went and did some shopping for us at Costco, so that's what we have. This is starting to look more like a stew, isn't it? Okay, now, actually it's looking like a delicious stew, and it smells so good in here. Okay, I'm going to let that sit for a moment while I grab the chicken stock. Here we go. This is 1 liter, which is close to a quart, going in there. And then I'm going to do what cooks have done since the beginning of time, I'm sure. I'm going to give this a really good stir, and I'm going to get all the bits off the bottom of the pot. And then I'm going to taste this so that I can see what else it might need in there. You need to be able to adjust it. It, of course, won't have all the flavors it'll have after it's been cooking away for a while. But here we go. I'm even going to use my wooden spoon. No, that's pretty good right there. I'm going to add a little more garlic to it. And I'm going to add a little more Italian seasoning. Not too much. I'm going to stir this. I think maybe we like our soup kind of thick, and I know that when this cooks down, the vegetables are going to release a lot of their water, and so I think that I'm in good shape here. So I'm going to get busy and prepare the canner. I'm going to bring this up to a boil, and then while it's doing that, I'm going to get the canner ready to go, and I'll move you to the counter. I'm going to reserve soup behind in the pot to make sure we have soup for lunch today. So I'm actually cooking once, and we're going to eat multiple times from that, which I think is a working person, or as somebody who's just maybe a tad lazy, like I am, this is a good way to go about it. So I will see you in a moment. So here I am back at the counter with the soup all prepared. It's ready to go into the jars. You may have noticed that I have not put any kind of rice or macaroni or anything into this. Now this is something that I would definitely do normally and kind of at the last minute, but this is how we use it. We're going to just cook this part in the jar, and then when we are ready to serve it, we can put it onto the stove, and we will at that point add whatever kind of carbohydrate you might like to add to it. So rice, or some people add macaroni. We add macaroni, and that's what I might do today. Add macaroni to it so that it's a little heartier, although this is looking pretty hearty right here. You could also add, I guess, quinoa or wild rice or anything like that kind of at the last minute. Put it on the stove. Especially if you use those handy little packages of rice from the grocery store, you know, the ones that are already pre-cooked. Those would be pretty handy to just throw in here, I think. Don't you? I know it's not exactly from scratch, but sometimes we need to determine what's going to work best for us, and sometimes that's just working fast. I've done that, and it works just fine. I prefer not to do that. I'm sure most of you do too. That's why you're canning and preserving your own food. So here we go. Well, I think I'm going to just add one more jar to this, and then we'll have enough left over for lunch. So I'm pretty pleased with that. How are you guys all making out with supplies? Man, they're in Canada. We are doing okay so far, but I'm starting to hear people say they're having trouble getting these lids, these snap lids, and I'm sure that must be kind of the same story everywhere, because so many people have started to can this year that it makes sense that they would run low on these items. They weren't prepared. I guess none of us were prepared for it, were we? Well, hopefully it won't catch us by surprise again. That we'll get busy, and I encourage all my friends and family and you guys too to get busy adding, even if it's just a few more things to your grocery cart on each one of your shops to the grocery store. Then please, if you can, do that, because I feel that we may not be through this yet, and I don't want to see anybody that is running low on supplies. I know that it can be hard and costly to stock up, but even if you can add an extra $10 to your grocery budget each week, it's amazing what you can add to your storehouse of supplies to look after yourselves. This, I still feel like there's a lot of soup in here, so this may be maybe I'll do another jar, another quart jar, and I'll see what's in here. We're just experimenting here. Let's see what a quart looks like, because I would stick this in the fridge, and that would be good for us for lunches on Monday, or actually to make a great evening meal too, because it's so stewy. Now, one of the things that we like to serve with our soup around here is biscuits. I make a sweet little honey biscuit that's really good, so I think I might try and get that recipe there for you today. Now, I'm feeling like there's still enough soup in there to feed us today by the time I add some macaroni to it. So I'm going to stick this one aside, seal it, let it cool, put it in the fridge for a weeknight meal. Then this guy is going to go back on the stove, and I'm going to add some macaroni to that. I may also add a little more chicken stock just to give it a little more volume. So I will be right back. I've got everything ready at the canner, and I will, oh, actually while you're still here, why don't we clean up these jars and get the lids and rings on? So I'm going to use vinegar because I have had, I've cooked meat here today, so we always take extra precaution when that's the case. We want to wipe these down really well. I've left 1 inch headspace in the jars, and I'm just going to wipe all the rims down, and I'm going to add the lids and the rings. I guess it's the rims I'm wiping down, right? Man, I'm having trouble talking today, folks. Maybe it's because it's been a while since I was here. And there we go. Last one. No, I'm going to do the quart while I'm standing here. Although I don't have the ring and the seal out. And because I'm going to keep it in the fridge, it doesn't matter as much, but let's try and keep everything tidy. On goes the lid, finger tight, goes the ring, and we're going to repeat this, and I will meet you at the canner. Now here we are at the canner. I think that you can see well enough. I have added the 8 cups of water to the canner. That's what's recommended. And I've also added about a tablespoon of vinegar because I noticed that my jars are starting to get a bit cloudy. And while that doesn't hurt anything, it doesn't look as good on the shelf. Now, I've tried these jars before and I don't think I can fit 5. Oh yes, I can. Slick as a whistle. So in they go. I put down the lid, I make sure that it's in closed position, that the weight is on exhaust, and then I'm going to hit the high. I'm going to set my time for 75 minutes because that's what's required for a pint. If you were going to do quarts in this, then you would need to set it for 90 minutes, and I'm going to hit start. And I will watch this go around until all the temperatures have raised to where they need to be. And then I'll get the E10, which will count down to 0, at which point the machine needs to be flipped over from exhaust to airtight, the little air valve at the back. And then it will start to count the number of minutes that it needs. So I am going to carry on with my lunch and get it ready, and I will also share the biscuit recipe with you. So I hope I'm going to be preparing for you today a sweet biscuit that we serve with all of our soups pretty much in the house. So I've just got a couple more things to gather up, and then I will be back to get started. Well, I think I've got it all here and ready. This is part of a soup that I'm doing today, and I'm happy to share all. I think I've gathered up all the ingredients that I need to do this, and this is a really quick recipe. So I have the oven turned at 415 degrees. That's right, 415 degrees, and it is preheating right now. And today is a busy day, so you may hear my dishwasher running and things are beeping and carrying on, much like it would be in your busy kitchen, I'm sure. So we're going to start off with 2 cups of just whole wheat flour. Now, I'm pretty careful about the measuring, so while I scoop, and you're not supposed to, I do scoop gently, and I do make sure that I'm getting an accurate 2 cup measure by just using the old tried and true home economics method of doing it that we learned in high school. I don't know if everybody had that everywhere, but we definitely had home ec, and it was where a lot of young people could learn the basics of cooking. So to that mixture, I'm going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And I should measure over here always and not over the bowl because it always spills everywhere. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I have these awesome little measuring spoons that I got on my last visit to my brother on the island, and I love them. They have the little birds and birdhouses on the top of them, and I use them every day. I'm going to add the last dry ingredient to go in here, which is a tablespoon of baking powder. Seems like a lot, but it's really necessary to give these the pep they need. And the recipe will be in the description box below. So I think I've got all the dry ingredients out of the way now. There we go. So we'll start on the rest. We need 1/3 of a cup of butter. And this butter should not be anything except room temperature. I know lots of people think that you need to use really cold butter. And you know what? Maybe you probably should. But I know that I got this recipe from my granny, and my granny Kathleen, and I know that she didn't have a good refrigerator, so her butter, like ours, is just in the cupboard. It is not kept cold in the refrigerator, and it holds really well there. Who else does that? Are we the only ones? I can't imagine we are. So I'm going to add the butter, which I have packed down into the 1/3 cup measure. I'm going to add that to the mixing bowl. As you can see, it's like a Pyrex 8-cup measure, which I just had out to measure water to go into the canner. And I'm just going to use a knife, and I'm going to cut this big block of butter up into smaller bits. And then I'm going to get in there with my handy dandy. You don't need this. You could definitely do it with forks or knives or however you're used to cutting in all your butter or lard or whatever you're cutting into your recipe that you're making. Whoops, getting a little crazy there. And then I'll stop partway through and just clean the butter out of the pastry cutter. This is a handy one for sure. I don't know the make. I think I might have bought it at the dollar store, but I'm not sure. A lot of the things that I have, I've had for years, and as long as they keep working for me, I don't see any reason to switch them out. Okay, you want this to be quite fine. You don't want big pieces of butter, you want them to be all quite fine, which is another thing that may be different than other biscuit recipes that you've seen or that you've made yourself. So I'll set that aside, and then I'm going to sweeten this up a little bit with some honey. I've got my cupboard doors flapping here, they're open, everything's on the go. It seems like I'm not very organized today, folks, but that's what happens when we got a lot of stuff on the go. I'm going to take this off, or we'll be here till next week getting the honey in there. So you could, I suppose, add sugar to this recipe. I'm not sure what the substitution would be for sweetness for replacing honey with sugar. But as long as you have honey, I'm not sure why you would. We're going to add 2 tablespoons, 2.5 tablespoons actually, of honey to this mixture. And when I'm done, I always have everything covered with honey, the counter, where I've sat the container down, everything. Everything is covered with honey, it seems like. I'm not sure why that is, but maybe it's because I do everything in a hurry. So you can see this is going to need a wipe before it goes back in the cupboard. And you can hear the canner in the background. So I'm just going to continue to use that knife. I'm not going to get anything else special out of the cupboard to mix this with. I do have a spoon right here, but I don't know why I prefer to just mix it with the knife. I don't want to squish it in there, I guess. I just want to make sure that it's really well mixed in, that everything's mixed off the bottom. And then to this, I'm going to use buttermilk. And we use quite a bit of buttermilk in our house. We use it for German pancakes, and we use it for biscuits, and I like to drink it. So if you don't have it in your kitchen, don't despair. You can use the same amount of regular milk and add a teaspoon of vinegar to it. Then you need to wait maybe about 10 minutes. So you should start this at the beginning of the process, and it will sour the milk and add the little bit of acid that you need to have in this recipe. So my canner is counting down at E10 right now. We need 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk, and as you can see, it's baking. So I'm quite careful with the measurements when I'm baking. So I'm just gonna dump this in. I'll use my knife to help clean out the cup. And then I'm gonna use my trusty knife to mix this together. This is a softer dough, but it's not like super soft, so. My granny used to say a lot of baking and candy making, its success was based on the weather, and that you needed to be cautious and not make candy when it was raining outside because it would make your candy grainy. So I don't know what that has to do with too much, but today it seems like my measurement was perfect. Some days I look at it and I think that might be a little bit dry, so maybe I'll add a little more milk to it, maybe a tablespoon, but today it seems great. Whoops, let's move that out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. Now I get in there with my hands. I try to make a ball sort of first. I'm just bringing it all together. That's all I'm doing. Just bringing it all together. I was pretty generous with the flour there. Now I'm just going to bring it to the center. I'm going to try and keep it as round as possible. I'm going to keep just squishing it down with my hands until it's around, I don't know, I'm going to say 1.25 inches. Yeah, maybe 1 inch thick, I guess. And I am just going to reach for a glass or something to use as a cutter. I think this one will work just fine. Let's see. I've just floured it. Yep, works just good. Honestly, I usually use the funnel from my canning supplies. You know, the one that you put in the top of the jar to make sure everything goes in the jar and not on the counter. But it happens to be dirty in the sink because I've just made soup. And I'm canning soup right now, so it's dirty. So I'm just going to make do with what I have, which happens to be a cup right now. And you can fly through these. Bring the little bits all together again. And in this case, that might be one big biscuit. I think I'll just leave that as is. They don't have to be pretty. Well, sometimes they have to be pretty. If you're having friends over, you may want to make them a little prettier. I'm using Pam, and this is the baking Pam. And I'm just using a round cake pan. I'm sure you could do this in plenty of other ways, but this is the way that I do it. So I'll put this big one in the middle, and then I'll just start to arrange these around the outside. These will cook in a 450-degree oven for 12 minutes. And when I pop them in there, I'm going to add the macaroni to my soup. And so we'll have everything all ready to go at the same time. Well, here we are, folks. It's all finished up. I've got my little biscuits. They're nice and golden brown, just lightly on the top and quite brown on the bottom. And when I open them up, they're quite flaky. I'm just going to add a little bit of butter to them, and then we're going to have lunch. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, that you would consider liking it and sharing it with your friends and subscribing to our channel. That would be fantastic. In the meantime, I hope that you have a really great week until I see you next, and I will definitely try to get one in the bank for the time that I'm away. It's definitely time for a holiday. I hope that you are all staying well and safe where you live, and I think about you every day. So I will talk with you soon. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.